Good morning, everyone. I'm going to do a talk today on called Musings on the Spiritual Path. It contains a lot of ideas that I've had and some controversial. Hope you enjoy. So why is it that we don't want to remain natural, to be a part of nature? We do our best to shut ourselves off from nature with our cities and our lifestyles. And those who are naturally beautiful have surgery to supposedly improve their looks, but it never does. It just adds man-made products and chemicals to a naturally beautiful face and body. The subject of tattoos, for example, is controversial, and there may be legitimate reasons for someone to have them, but they are again man-made, and they're additions to what does not need them. Some are artistic, if the person has some perception of what true beauty is, but most reflect the attitudes of a materialistic world. And just add to that materialism. Regular trips to the gym also prove the domination of the physical in many lives. All this can make the person at odds with what is natural and reinforce an alienation from it. And this may stem from an obsession with the material and a blindness to the spiritual. People believe that they are the body, and in fact it is just a temporary habitation for the soul. Yet the paradox is that society in general wallows in violence of many kinds and tolerates it to a certain extent, but is terrified of the physical body in its natural state and is often repelled by it. Is this because we cannot face anything that is free from human contamination? And there comes a time when we have to face the naked truth, no matter how uncomfortable it is. People often prefer a pleasant lie to an unpleasant truth. In the final analysis, it is what is within that really matters, and this is unchanging. Nowadays, children are encouraged to take up sport and are told it is character building, but it also can create competitiveness, which again is lauded. However, competitiveness creates a divide between winners and losers and does not encourage feelings of brotherhood and sisterhood. Sport and exercise definitely have their place, but young people should also be imbued with spiritual values, such as morality, responsibility, brotherly and sisterly love of a pure kind. We need mutual culture rather than self-culture. And there is much talk nowadays about self-love, but we have to be careful that this does not become selfishness. And also we are told to create barriers to others that they must not cross. But this can become the great dire heresy of separateness that weans us from the rest if taken too far. So there has to be a solution as to why there is so much hatred in the world and so little love. H.P. Blavatsky says in the Key to Theosophy, if the action of one reacts on the lives of all, and this is the true scientific idea, then it is only by all men becoming brothers and all women sisters, and by all practicing in their daily lives true brotherhood and true sisterhood, that the real human solidarity, which lies at the root of the elevation of the race, can ever be attained. So why are we so afraid of each other? So many tragedies, people killed in wars and acts of terrorism. Everyone who dies is someone's son or daughter, or husband or wife, or mother or father. The perpetrators shut out of their minds any feelings of compassion or love, and driven by some political or religious ideology, are willing to kill or maim their brothers and sisters for something that is ultimately of no real importance. A will-o'-the-wisp in the grand scale of things. People fear what they hate and hate what they fear, and so create barriers that prevent them looking into the heart of their fellow pilgrim and seeing that the light that shines in them is no different than the light that shines in you and me and everyone. These people smother their souls and become less than human, because unless we are touched by the beauty of the soul, we wander in the dark places of our hearts, devoid of pity, devoid of love, devoid of understanding. Politics and religion divide and make their adherents intolerant of other ways of thought. We have to come to realise that we have to be aware of the spirit in everyone, and that it has nothing whatever to do with man-made religions or philosophies, which reflect the attitudes and prejudices of those who have created them and the time they were created in. How wonderful it is to break free and breathe the clear air of the spirit and soar above the morass of modern civilization. I often use Plato's saying that heaven-sent madness is preferable to man-made sanity. We are told what constitutes sanity and keeps us restrained within the confines of limited thoughts. We have to act in a certain conditioned way to be regarded as sane. And these are based upon a misunderstanding of our true nature. If we act spontaneously under the guidance of our higher self, we will be regarded as insane, because those who judge us have no awareness of the spiritual dimension to their being. So to them it will seem like madness. And I've mentioned this before in previous talks, but it seemed appropriate to repeat it here. Negative energy floods the world at the moment due to this great dire heresy of separateness that weans us from the rest. Society in general is so embroiled in this cycle of violence that it cannot see any alternative but to assert itself over those weaker, which has been engendered by the obsession with competition and competitiveness. In supposedly Christian countries, Jesus' teaching of loving one's enemies is totally ignored by the majority of people, and even devout Christians. In fact, the concept of an enemy is a negative way of thinking. It is promoting separateness again. The amount of those who die in a conflict is so overwhelming that we shut out of our minds the horror of what is occurring. It touches us in many ways: sadness, anger, pity, and compassion. But the full realization of the effects and consequences of the action often escapes us. For many people, an immersion in TV, films, and violent video games, etc., blurs the bridge between fantasy and reality. And so to view a horrific scene on a news program is often indistinguishable to many from a scene from a film or a TV drama. This is often almost a subconscious occurrence. We often are oblivious to the effect the media is having upon us and how little most people actually think for themselves. The majority of human beings are good-natured in many ways, because the feeling of oneness cannot be completely crushed out in most. But we still are bombarded with these images and ideas that are not our own. In fact, in many cases, we may think they are our own, but actually belong to someone or something we saw, heard, or read many years ago, but has disappeared from our conscious memory, but is rooted in our subconscious. So how do we live in the light of our spiritual self in a spontaneous manner? If we are immersed in this society, as most of us are, it is not an easy question to answer. Most of us have duties to fulfill to family, friends, and to our fellow human beings. In general, we are on this planet to learn and to grow, either spiritually or materially. If we choose the former, then we should focus our attention upon those things that help to awaken our awareness of the spiritual side of life. Beautiful art, poetry, and music can help us, as can absorbing the beauties of nature. On a still higher level, meditation and the reading and practice of spiritual literature is essential. We must also learn to see what our fellow human beings are in reality, behind the masks they wear. Know that if we criticize anyone for their race, religion, or colour, that we may have been in the same position in a previous life, or maybe in a future one. What connects us all is a spirit within, which is identical in everyone. Find the beauty in ourselves and see it in others. Writing about theosophy, but applicable to all genuine spiritual paths, H.P. Blavatsky writes, kindness, absence of every ill feeling or selfishness, charity, goodwill to all beings, and perfect justice to others as to oneself are its chief features. He who teaches theosophy preaches the gospel of goodwill, and the converse of this is also true. He who preaches the gospel of goodwill teaches theosophy. So an appreciation of what is truly beautiful and therefore illuminates the mind and draws it towards the soul, and through the soul to the spirit, is the talisman and the golden thread that leads us out of the labyrinth of our earthbound thoughts and into the pure air of our highest aspirations. Can we truly see what is behind the veil of illusion and into the world as it is, and not as we have been conditioned to see it? The wonders of nature that are obscured by the selfish goals set by those who would destroy its beauty to gain transitory material goods that will not outlast the brief time we are here in this particular life, and they have no real meaning in the scale of things. There is nothing more meaningful and beautiful than the light kindled in our hearts that will illumine the world we live in and reveal to us the love that transforms and can awaken in others an awareness of the light that is in their hearts. The truth is that most people in the West are quite happy with their lives and see no reason to give up their comfortable lifestyles to follow a path laden with thorns. In the voice of the silence, it is called the path of woe. But as we only seek happiness and love, who would want to live a life of woe? It is really only those who suffer that are willing to accept learning through that process with the promise that beyond the pain, there will be an eternal peace, if only we understand that the suffering of the whole is our suffering and vice versa. Those who are willing to follow this hard and thorny path are those who have pledged to try to end the suffering of those who wander in darkness. Yet these must have found the love and peace that is beyond the suffering. Otherwise, what have they to give and what have they to share? Beyond the seeming darkness, there is perpetual light, and only those who have discovered this can safely enter the self-created hell of others to shine that light in the gloom and lead the way to a deeper understanding, one that tells us that all the suffering affects only the transitory physical self and not the higher self, which is in a constant state of meditation in a place of safety. Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Zen teacher, has said that we are like flowers and should be watered by love to make us grow. It's nice to think of this example of flower power and to realise that we need to be loved and understood by someone or something. Whether another person can ever really understand us or whether we can even understand ourselves is another question. But at least we know that love makes us feel better and more able to cope with life. On the subject of love, Leo Tolstoy wrote, "Whether the employment of violence or the endurance of evil will be useful or harmful I do not know, and no one knows. But I do know, as every person knows, that love is well-being. The love of others for me is a blessing, and still more is my love for others. The supreme bliss is my love for others, and not only for those who love me, but as Christ said, for those who hate me, offend me, and commit evil against me. However strange these things may sound to someone who has not felt this, it is so. And when you think about it and experience it, you are only surprised at how you could ever have failed to understand it. Love, true love, love that denies itself and transfers itself to another, is the awakening within oneself of the highest universal principle of life. But it is only true love and affords all the happiness it can give when it is simply love, free from anything personal, from the smallest drop of personal bias towards its object. And such love can only be felt for one's enemy, for those who hate and offend. Thus, the instruction to love not those who love us, but those who hate us, is not an exaggeration, nor an indication of possible exclusions, but just an indication of that opportunity and possibility of receiving the supreme bliss that love gives. That this must be so follows logically, and one only needs to experience it to be convinced. And then instances of offence and assault become valuable and desirable. And thus, having perceived the essence of the human soul, we see that it works in such a way that responding to evil with evil makes it suffer, whereas responding to evil with love leads to the highest attainable bliss. So we should not only learn to love our family and friends. It does say in the Bible somewhere that even robbers and murderers love the family and friends. So we must also learn to love our enemies, because by giving them love, we're helping them. Giving them hatred and will only increase the hatred within them. But what is violence? How did it arise? Why do we allow its existence? It has nothing to do with the spiritual life at all. It has arisen only because of our misunderstanding of our true nature. Anne Frank has written that, in spite of everything, I still believe that people are really good at heart. I simply can't build up my hopes on a foundation consisting of confusion, misery, and death. I see the world gradually being turned into a wilderness. I hear the ever-approaching thunder, which will destroy us too. I can feel the sufferings of millions, and yet, if I look up into the heavens, I think that it will all come right, that this cruelty too will end, and that peace and tranquility will return again. So these words were written in her diary whilst in hiding. I often wonder whether she still felt the same when she was going through the hell in the concentration camp. I would hope so. But to maintain such compassionate ideals in the midst of all the death and insanity would need a strong soul in touch with the divine. But the sentiment is wonderful and has much wider implications. It breathes hope for all humanity in the end. Yes, the world goes crazy with man-made violence and cruelty. It becomes more difficult to those on a spiritual path to maintain their equilibrium. But in the end, the good, the true, and the beautiful will triumph over these will-o'-the-wisps of human insanity. This is because there is a light that never goes out, as the Smiths say in a song with that title. In the Bible, John 1:9, there is mention of the true light, which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. In a wider sense, it is a light that illuminates not just men and women, but every living thing, and grows brighter as the vehicle it shines through becomes more refined and is capable of bearing witness to this light, and with it casting a ray of hope in the hearts of those who struggle in darkness and are struggling to make some sense of their lives. We must therefore learn to understand the transience of the material world and of our lives within it, and the fact that the hour will never strike for the true man and woman, the spiritual being. Our future is one of ever-growing beauty and light. We cannot conceive of the worlds that we will dwell in or the wonders that we will see and feel on our pilgrimage once we are free of the grip of the material self. To reach this, we must not run away from the trials of life, but face them bravely and overcome those things that hold us back. Those mind-forged manacles that William Blake writes of. If we flee, we will have to return until we have dealt with the problem. The way is not easy, but if we learn to love and understand our fellow pilgrims, then we will never be alone on the often misty road that we travel on together. We must always be ready to lend a helping hand to those who are struggling on besides us. H.P. Blavatsky again writes, from strength to strength, from the beauty and perfection of one plane to the greater beauty and perfection of another, with accessions of new glory, of fresh knowledge and power in each cycle. Such is the destiny of every ego, which thus becomes its own saviour in each world and incarnation. So this gives us great promise for the future, if we are willing to place ourselves under the guidance of our higher self and live in the light of our spiritual nature. It is all a great adventure with no end in sight, as far as our limited senses can tell anyway. But on this planet, here and now, the first and foremost task we should all undertake is to learn to live together as brothers and sisters, regardless of race, creed, sex, caste or colour. Because, as the Theosophical motto says, there is no religion higher than truth. Thank you. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. Peace on earth and goodwill to all beings. Thank you so much for listening.